She was just organizing frozen meat shipments until the CEO heard her speak flawless Korean. What he did next changed everything. At Northcore Foods, no one really paid attention to the warehouse crew. Not because they weren't important, on the contrary. They were the reason frozen pizzas and bags of mixed vegetables made it to customers on time. But like conveyor belts or chutes, the warehouse was a place where everything was expected to run smoothly. No noise, no complaints, and especially no attention. They worked in freezing temperatures, 14 degrees Fahrenheit, every single day, moving like shadows in reflective vests, pushing pallets, scanning barcodes, applying labels, stepping aside for forklifts. Conversations, when they happened at all, were usually no more than a head nod or someone shouting, "Watch it," when something dropped. And in that world, Leticia Tron was part of the floor itself. A woman of color, hair tied in a low bun, eyes shadowed behind safety goggles, hands always wrapped in thick gloves. Most of her co-workers didn't even know her name. In the system, she was employee ID 6281. That girl from Zone A5, the quiet Asian chick who always bows. What they didn't know was that Leticia had worked there for almost 7 years. No one asked if she had kids, where she lived, what she liked. Sometimes they gave her half-joking, half-insulting nicknames, Miss Kung Fu, Chinatown, and once, she overheard someone whisper behind her back, "Look, it's a walking import chicken." But Leticia never reacted. She knew the unspoken rules. If you have dark skin here, you keep your head down. Especially if you don't have a degree, no professional background, and come from an immigrant family. She worked hard, precisely, and always on time. She knew how to stack freight for maximum space efficiency, and could recall almost every SKU code in the warehouse by heart. But to most people, she was still just the quiet girl behind the cart. Leticia walked softly, silently, like she was trying not to leave footprints on the frozen concrete. Tuesday morning, Nathan Briggs, the CEO of Northcore Foods, made an unannounced visit to the company's main distribution warehouse in Minnesotano. Advance warning: no assistant tagging along. It was the kind of drop-in he did only when he felt like something wasn't adding up. This time, the thing that didn't add up was something good. For the past 2 months, complaints about misdelivered or delayed shipments from logistics partners had dropped sharply, even though the peak season had just ended. The unusually high efficiency triggered his instincts, and that meant only one thing: he had to see it for himself. Nathan wasn't the type of CEO who stayed locked behind a glass office, managing via Zoom dashboards. He had started his career tossing frozen salmon onto trucks in Alaska. He knew what it felt like to be part of the invisible workforce. And he believed that when real change happened, the signs always showed up in places no one bothered to look. As he stepped into Zone B, he paused to observe. Cold air wafted from a row of industrial freezers, making his face scrunch up. The screech of metal wheels echoed against concrete, blending with the constant beeping of barcode scanners. Everything moved in a mechanical rhythm, icy symphony of labor. Until he heard something that made him stop. A voice, but not in English, not even in Spanish, the second most common language on the warehouse floor. Korean. He turned down a side aisle. A delivery driver from Seoul was arguing in frustrated Korean, waving a shipping form and shaking his head. Standing in front of him was a petite warehouse worker, spine straight, expression calm. She was speaking fluently. Nathan stayed a few yards back, just listening. Leticia Tron, unfazed, was asking the driver for his order number, explaining the recently updated QR format, and handing him a standardized form for comparison. Her Korean was smooth, confident, no hesitation. She gently emphasized, "Chuamnidaman im tuandesigemnida." "I'm sorry, but this is the updated form." The driver paused for a second, then nodded. Okay, thank you." Before Nathan could step forward, Leticia turned to her left. A Russian driver was holding a warehouse map, looking completely lost. With an almost unbelievable switch, she spoke in fluent Russian. «Вы ищете выход на загрузочную платформу? Это через 2 коридора налево. You're looking for the loading dock exit? It's 2 aisles down, turn left. The man smiled, nodded gratefully. Letitia gave both men a polite bow, then turned back to her cart and continued her work as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Nathan stood frozen. It wasn't like he'd never seen a multilingual employee before. He'd overseen international transit hubs, worked with teams across continents. But here in the middle of a cold storage warehouse in Minnesota, in a dusty uniform and scuffed steel-toe boots stood a brown-skinned woman switching between 3 languages in 3 minutes with the calm composure of a seasoned diplomat. He took a few steps forward, pulling off his knit cap, his voice soft but clear. "Excuse me." Letitia turned her head. Her eyes met his for a split second, then quickly dropped reflexively. "That was Korean, right?" "Yes, sir," she replied quietly, calmly. "I was just helping out." "And Russian, too?" "Yes, that as well." "How many languages do you speak?" Letitia hesitated for a moment, then said, 9. A little bit of Latin, too, but I don't count that. Nathan didn't respond right away, not because of the number, but because of how she said it. There was no pride in her tone, no hint of boasting, just truth, plain and steady. And that truth made him feel ashamed because, in all the years she'd worked here, he had never once asked her name. She had always been there, head down, working, translating, guiding, bridging the gap in a world that didn't even realize it had one. He looked at her a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Do you have a few minutes? I'd like to talk with you in my office." Letitia hesitated. Not out of fear, but because life had taught her that women of color don't usually get called upstairs unless something went wrong. Still, she nodded. "Yes, sir, I do." Letitia followed CEO Nathan Briggs into a small back office near the end of the warehouse floor, usually reserved for internal meetings between shift leads and operations managers. The space was modest, a worn-out wooden table, the scent of stale coffee mixed with printer paper, and the hum of an old AC unit. Not fancy by any stretch, but to Letitia, it might as well have been another world. She stood near the door, gloves still on, eyes not holding Nathan's gaze for more than 2 seconds at a time. She had no idea why he'd called her up. Deep down, there was still the defensive reflex of someone who'd been misunderstood more times than she could count. "Have a seat," Nathan gestured toward a gray fabric chair. "I won't keep you long." Letitia sat slowly, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Nathan sat across from her. His expression wasn't sharp, just focused. "That earlier. That was Korean, right?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." "And then Russian?" "That too." "Do you usually do that? Help delivery drivers like that?" Letitia gave a small shrug. "When needed. There usually isn't anyone else around who speaks their language. They get lost or drop deliveries at the wrong docks." Nathan nodded slowly. "How many languages do you speak?" Letitia looked up just slightly, like she was doing a mental count. 9. A little Latin too, but I don't really count that. Nathan raised his eyebrows. 9? His voice didn't carry suspicion, but the surprise was unmistakable, and something else, a quiet guilt, like finding a diamond in a drawer you never thought to open. "Where did you learn them?" "Mostly self-taught," Letitia replied, her voice even and soft. "I did go to college, but I didn't finish." Nathan paused for a beat, voice softening. "Would you mind telling me a little more about that?" Letitia leaned back slightly, not pulling away, just weighing something larger than the question itself. Then she nodded. "Sure. If you really want to know," Letitia began with a faint, wistful smile. "I was born in Fresno, California. My parents were Vietnamese refugees, boat people. They fled in 1982 on a wooden vessel 6 days at sea. My mom used to say that the moment her feet hit the dirt at the refugee camp in the Philippines, she promised herself her child would never have to live with their mouth shut the way she had to." Nathan leaned in, listening without interruption. "My mom worked nights at a textile factory. My dad was a cook at a small pho place. We weren't rich, but they raised me to be decent. My mom was a tough woman, never complained. Never let me quit anything." Letitia gave a quiet chuckle. She pushed me to learn English, then French, then Spanish. Every time I got a sentence right, she gave me a penny. I still have the old tin box I kept them in. She didn't read well, but she knew how to teach. She'd say, "If you want to live in a foreign land, you need to hear their voice, understand their meaning, and answer in your own words without bowing, without pretending to be someone you're not." By high school, I fell in love with languages. I enrolled at UCLA, majoring in linguistics. I thought I'd work at an NGO someday, maybe become a UN interpreter. I loved the idea of connecting people through words. Letitia paused. Her gaze shifted past the wall, like she was looking at something much farther away. But in my final year, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Years of working in that textile factory with no proper ventilation. I withdrew from school to come home. She swallowed hard, but her voice stayed steady. I worked at a corner store during the day and cared for her at night. She passed away while I was pregnant. My son's 11 now. His father disappeared when I was still carrying, so I took any job I could. Didn't need a degree to wash dishes, wait tables overnight. Eventually, I landed here. Northcore was the first place to offer me steady hours and health benefits. It let me drop my son off at school in the morning. I'm grateful for that. I've never complained. Nathan nodded. His gaze softened, but Leticia wasn't finished. And the languages? I didn't stop. I'd study during my lunch breaks. Free apps, library books, movies without subtitles. Each month I'd pick a language and a topic. Practice in the mirror. But no one knew. Because I never told anyone. Nathan leaned in a little. Why not? Letitia met his eyes this time, steady, no flinch. Because here, when a brown woman like me speaks French fluently, people assume I'm pretending. If I correct someone's Spanish pronunciation, they say I'm showing off. One time I helped a Portuguese-speaking driver sort out a delivery issue, and later that day a supervisor told me to stop acting like a shift lead. Here, Mr. Briggs, when you wear a reflective vest, it means you keep quiet, keep your head down, and work. There was no anger in her voice, just fact, plain as the concrete she walked on every day. The room fell silent. So quiet the hum of the freezer compressor from the other side of the wall rang like a distant drum. Nathan leaned back slightly. He was a CEO but once. Not so long ago, he'd been the one people walked past, like a fixture, not a person. "What languages do you speak?" he asked gently. Letitia listed them without hesitation, like ticking off chapters in a book. English, Spanish, French, Korean, Russian, Portuguese, Japanese, Swahili, Arabic. Latinti can read, but I don't speak it. Nathan exhaled, not quite out of awe, but something closer to shame. "And no one here has ever asked you?" Letitia shook her head with a faint shrug. They didn't know there was anything worth asking. Silence returned, thick this time. Finally, Nathan stood. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. "Leticia, I think it's time people knew." Nathan didn't waste time. That very afternoon, he called an emergency meeting with HR and the warehouse operations leads. On paper, he introduced it as a pilot initiative, Multilingual Logistics Liaison. A brand new Roleno formal job description, no precedent in Northcore's existing structure. But Nathan knew exactly what he was doing. "We have a talent sitting right here on the warehouse floor," he said firmly, locking eyes with everyone around the table. "And if this company doesn't know how to recognize that, then the system is broken, not her." Leticia was called up to the HR office the following morning. They handed her a new navy blue uniform shirt, this time with a collar. Her temporary badge read, "Leticia Tran, Liaison Pilot Role." When she stepped out of the office, the front desk receptionist stood up, staring at her as if she were a different person altogether. Word spread like wildfire through the warehouse. No formal email, no bulletin announcement, just whispers and sideways glances. When someone who used to wear a reflective vest gets summoned to the second floor, everyone notices. That lunchtime, in the break room, 2 delivery drivers leaned close, whispering, "I heard that Asian girl got promoted. The one who speaks Korean?" Yeah. And apparently that's not even the only language she knows. At the next table over, a team lead slammed his lunch tray down. I've been managing shipments for 12 years. Never been late once. And Shesh didn't even finish college and now she gets an air-conditioned office? Another shrugged. It's all about diversity now, buddy. CEO's just trying to make the newsletter look good. Leticia didn't hear these words directly, but she could feel the shift in the air. People who used to chat with her at lunch now gave her a brief nod before walking away. When she passed her old section, conversation stopped. Some stared at her up and down, eyes filled with doubt, maybe even a hint of contempt. One day, she stepped into the dispatch room and handed a translated document to the Zone C manager. He didn't take it right away. Instead, he said, tone dry with sarcasm, "So what now? You're my boss or just a self-declared interpreter?" Leticia gave a soft smile. "I'm just here to help. If you ever need support, I'm around." "Nah, I'm good. My English works just fine." That's when it hit her. Being seen is one thing. Being accepted is something else entirely. Leticia didn't complain. She started by asking the IT team for a copy of the warehouse layout. Then, she created a 3-language map: English, Spanish, and Russian. Each section included icons and instructions in clear, friendly language. She posted them at loading zones, entry points, and staging areas. Below each map, a note in bold letters read, "Need this map in another language? Leave a note at HR or email me directly." In the first week alone, Leticia received 17 requests. By week 2, she began filming how-to videos explaining warehouse system siege with subtitles in English, Spanish, and Russian. There was no fancy studio, just her phone propped on a box of frozen peas, ceiling lights above, and her clear, patient voice explaining QR scanning. One video about checking shipment labels got over 200 views in just 3 days. A Ukrainian driver emailed her, "You're the first person to explain this in my language without making me feel stupid." Then came the crisis in Chicago. A major miscommunication disrupted their delivery system. A $30,000 shipment was held up due to errors in export forms. Leticia was pulled into a Zoom meeting on short notice. She joined the call, greeted a French driver in fluent Parisian French, then turned and explained the forms to a Brazilian employee in precise Portuguese. The Chicago conference room went dead silent. The issue was resolved in 12 minutes. The next morning, the Chicago branch manager sent a message to Nathan. "I don't know where you found her, but thank God you did." Over time, people who once looked at Leticia with skepticism began to ask her things. Isidro, a warehouse associate from Mexico, approached her during break. "How do you say thank you in Swahili?" Another team lead asked, "How do I say I'm sorry I'm late in Japanese?" Leticia didn't just answer. Each day, she wrote a new multilingual phrase on the break room whiteboard. Underneath, a simple message: "If you use this today, you're one step closer to someone else." One afternoon, walking past the packing area, Leticia saw a heated exchange: 3 employees speaking 3 different languages, trying to solve a problem. Instead of walking past, she stepped in, listened in all 3 tongues, and gently offered a unified solution. The issue was resolved in under 10 minutes. The next day, the lead from that section passed her in the hallway and gave a small nod. "Thanks," he said. "I was wrong to judge you by your uniform." A week later, Leticia was invited to speak at the internal leadership training, something unheard of for a staff member without a college degree. She stood in front of the room. No slides, no corporate buzzwords, just her, a dry erase marker, and a printed world map taped behind her. "We move hundreds of shipments a day, but every one of them comes from a person, and every person has a language. If you learn to listen in their language, you'll learn to resolve problems without needing to argue." The room stayed silent, not because they were bored, but because they were listening, really listening. On her way out, Leticia passed by Zone A5, her old section. Someone waved to her first. For the first time in years, she felt like she didn't have to ask permission just to exist. 3 months after Letitia was appointed as the multilingual logistics liaison, a dark luxury sedan rolled quietly through the North Core parking lot, like the morning air itself. Cold, silent, and expected. There were no company plates, no announcements. But everyone knew. Corporate had sent someone down. Her name was Eleanor Craig, Regional Executive Director for the North Division. A white woman with silver hair, a silk tie, and eyes that had long mastered the art of reading a person within the first 3 sentences they spoke. Leticia was called into the main conference room at 9 a.m. Nathan Briggs stood by the window, arms crossed, not nervous, but thoughtful. Eleanor didn't waste time. She opened the folder in front of her, tapping her nails lightly across the printed lines. "You're Letitia Tran?" "Yes, ma'am. Current role, logistics liaison. But according to your file, you have no college degree, no management certifications, and no formal leadership training?" Letitia smiled. Not defensive, not afraid. "That's correct. I don't have a degree. Just 12 years of showing up when no one was looking." The room fell silent. Eleanor blinked once. Nathan stayed still. She flipped to the next page, eyes flickering, but not objecting. "I've been told you reduced shipment processing times by 14%, improved delivery accuracy in our most error-prone zones." Letitia nodded. "I just connected the dots no one thought to connect. Language is how freight finds the right place." Eleanor closed the folder. She said nothing for a moment, then stood. "That's all I needed." But just before she stepped out, she turned back and looked at Leticia for the first time, not with evaluation, but with recognition. "You're not what I pictured." Letitia tilted her head slightly. "I never am." The next morning, Nathan sent a company-wide email. The subject line was simple: "Voice from the floor." In it, he wrote, "I believe every idea worth hearing deserves a place to be heard, regardless of your title, your uniform color, or where your shift starts." The first open floor meeting was held the following Monday. Anyone, warehouse workers, drivers, freezer techs, could step up to the mic. No sign-up, no filters. Leticia was the first to be invited up. She stood before the crowd, the same crowd that once ignored her, doubted her, even mocked her. She didn't bring a slideshow, just a slip of paper, with one handwritten line. "I've worked here for 7 years. Today is the first day I get to speak without asking for permission." The room fell completely silent. Letitia continued, "I used to be afraid that if I spoke French, people would think I was showing off. If I spoke Arabic, they'd say I was trying too hard. If I spoke Russian, someone would raise an eyebrow and ask, 'Where'd you learn that? And why are you here then?' But the truth is, I'm here because I needed to survive. I learned because I needed hope. And I kept going because I believed if I could still breathe, I still had the right to try." No one clapped. Not because they didn't support her, but because they were too busy re-examining themselves. And every time they had looked the other way when someone like Leticia was standing nearby. A week later, Leticia was called into the general manager's office. She assumed it was about a training program update. But sitting on the desk was a new metal nameplate brushed silver, laser-etched, "Leticia Tran, Logistics Communication Officer." She picked it up. Her hands trembled slightly. Nathan stood by the door, smiling. "It's not a trial role anymore. You're the first. But you won't be the last." That afternoon, Leticia walked back down to Zone A5, the place where she'd once been. Just employee ID, 6281. She wore her navy shirt now, sleeves crisp, hair still in its low bun. But this time, her eyes didn't flinch away. As she passed the final row of pallets, a man turned around. It was Raymond, someone who used to work her shift. The same guy who once jokingly called her Chinatown when he thought she didn't understand. Raymond stood up straighter, pulled off his hard hat. "Miss Tran," he said slowly, "anything I can help you with?" Leticia looked at him. She didn't smirk, didn't bring up the past. She just nodded, calm and kind. "Thank you, Raymond. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's more than enough." Then she turned away and walked toward the staircase that led back up to the office wing. Beneath her boots, The warehouse floor was still slick with condensation. But each step she took now left a mark that couldn't be erased. That evening, Leticia sat in her small office. Nothing fancy. Just a desk, a chair, and a laminated map of the world tacked to the wall. On it, she'd pinned tiny dots on every country from which a driver had once thanked her in their native language. France, Brazil, South Korea, Morocco, Turkey, Ukraine, Kenya. She picked up a marker and wrote a new line on the whiteboard next to her desk. Language is not just words. It's a bridge. And every bridge deserves a name. As the office lights flicked off, Leticia looked out at the distant warehouse floor. The same space where she had once only been known as the girl from A5. Now, they called her Miss Tran. Not because of her title, but because they had finally seen her for who she really was. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to stop, truly see you, even if you're standing behind a stack of freight.